from the O-H-I-O. The clan don't want smoke, cause we quick to tag they toes. Boom. Hey, what it do, man? What's happening? This your partner, the Union Soldier, man. Welcome to the new channel. All right. Appreciate the love, appreciate the support, man. Click subscribe, share with a friend if you vibe with it. If you don't, I totally understand. All right. So this first video of this type will be a rebuttal to my dear brother, Anthony Brian Logan. Now, I will go on the record and say I actually like the brother. Actually watched a few of his videos prior to this particular conversation we're going to get into, which is his stance that the Confederate statue, Robert E. Lee, should not come down in Virginia, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. Okay. But I actually rocked with the bro. Whether you like it or not, say what you want to say, whatever. You know what I mean? I do. Okay. But let's get into some rebuttals, and I want to roll the first clip.
Even in the northern states that did not have slaves, you couldn't just be up there as a black person, let alone a runaway slave. Most states had laws against runaway slaves coming into their place. If they were so loving and caring, why was that the case?
All right. So in that clip, he said that most states had laws against runaways. He's talking about the northern states. Most states had laws against runaway slaves coming into their place. If the North was so loving and caring, why was this the case? Now, you asking a question about the North. Now, I rocks with the North. I'm the Union Soldier. All my raps is about banging on the Confederates. That's my thing, okay? That's my art. That's how I get it off, but that's how I express my truth. You see my shirt. I'm riding with Lincoln all day long, and this is for real, for real. You're painting the picture about the North not being a caring place in a sense. And yes, I'm sure there are racist people in the North. Shit, I remember being in the backwoods at boot camp and seeing KKK signs back in the sticks. Yeah, you're going to have that element anywhere you go, to be honest, for the most part, right? It's just the nature of human beings. However, I'm not going to allow you to paint that picture as if it is the only narrative. That's not true. It's actually it's a half truth, and not even half. It's a small piece of truth, because again, you will have a small populace that's racist. The overwhelming majority was not pro-slavery because they wasn't part of the slave trade. They just wasn't part of it. Okay. Now, here's the answer to the question. Fugitive Slave Act of 1793. Again, the question is, most states had laws against runaway slaves coming to their place. If they're so loving and caring, why is this the case? The case is because the federal government in 1793, the South, which is delegates from the territories, from the states, make up the federal government, are complaining that the slaves are crossing the Ohio River, or this Mason-Dixon line as well, and they're getting up north and they're being free, and this is not fair. So Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act that says, hey, Northern, if you see some slaves, you have to return them back. Okay. I want to turn your attention to the very next year, 1794, which is known as the Slave Trade Act. It is illegal for the South or any slaveholder to sell slaves and send slaves out of the country. Now, you've always had two contending forces in America. You had one party that was pro-slavery, and then you had another party that was against slavery. The 13 colonies, for sure, not all colonies, but 13 colonies at that time had slave population and slave business, without a shadow of a doubt. At the incorporation of the United States of America, the founding fathers, in which Abraham Lincoln will use the Declaration of Independence as his cornerstone argument against Judge Stephen Douglas, okay, and say, hey, the Negro is also entitled to the same free and inalienable rights that the white man is entitled to based off the Declaration of Independence of our forefathers. So the United States of America has a plan to systematically remove slavery, and I'll prove it. So now, just going to answer this point. The northern sentiment of having to return slaves back down south because of a Fugitive Slave Act is a federal mandate, bruh. Okay, let's be clear. But let's really look at the rebuttal. Somebody who's against slavery said, nope, we passing the law. You ain't going to be trading niggas up out of here. Just going to keep it real. Okay? We got to look at that. That's the story that we need to be telling, the story of victory. I'm not here to uphold no Confederate nothing. I'm smoking all Confederates and all KKK on every single level possible, period. All right? So, we see somebody made a move against them, okay? Now, let's just move on to the second point. And I really got something on that point because it's actually ingenious, for real, because if you're going to calculate that you're going to systematically remove slavery, you have to calculate that you may have to go to war against the people who have the slaves, which end up happening. So if you were going to systematically remove slavery and go to war later, what would be the first thing that you would do systematically? You would stop the exportation of slaves because you're going to need this group of people to swell up and eventually come onto your side. And that's what happened. I'm on the side of Harriet Tubman. I don't know what side y'all on, but I'm on the side of Harriet Tubman. And by the way, when I say that, Harriet Tubman was a Union spy rolling with Colonel James Montgomery from Ohio. I got to say that. Colonel James Montgomery, the North is about it. He gave Harriet Tubman guns, nigga. Real shit. Google it. Ohio, nigga. We bout it. Now, let's move to point 2.
Because what I was taught back in the day in school was that the North fought the South to end slavery. But then when I got to be an adult and did my own independent research, I realized it wasn't true. It just wasn't the case because the main thing that's in my mind is how can the North fight the South to end slavery when they have slaves?
So you would hear him say, in school, we were taught that the North fought, he was taught that the North fought the South to end slavery, but this is not true based on his independent research. You heard that. And his main question was, well, how can the North fight the South to end slavery when the North has slaves? Boy, I'm going to have to get into this. So let's get into some answers to this. Rebuttal. Northwest Ordinance, ladies and gentlemen. In 1787, the United States government, before the Constitution was written, the Constitution is the foundation of law of the United States government. Okay? The Constitution is completed in 1789. 1787, there's already an ordinance on the books called the Northwest Ordinance, NWO, the real New World Order. The Northwest Ordinance was to end slavery. They said no slaves are allowed in the new territory. I always say it in the raps. Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, right? That area, you cannot have slaves in this new territory. Interesting. So how can you say that the North had slaves? And I'm sure people up north did have some slaves, but the institution of slavery was not a northern thing. You're not going to sell me on that. Because if the institution of slavery was a northern thing, then why would the federal government have to pass a Fugitive Slave Act saying, return them slaves back down south, please? Answer me that, bro. You see? So the historical record in the law shows that people were following the North Star, slaves, getting free. And then the law had to be wrote to say, oh, return these people back. And then another law was on the books way before the Fugitive Slave Act that said, hey, ain't gonna be no slaves in this new territory up here. What a coincidence that that's actually first. No slaves are allowed in the new territory. And then slaves start running away to go up there. That's how it goes. Okay. Another thing is your own words contradict each other because you just said even in northern states that didn't have slaves.
Even in the northern states that did not have slaves.
So either did we have slaves? Because your question was, well, how can the North interfere with the South when they had slaves? But then you turn around and said, well, the northern states that didn't have slaves. Which one is it? And I ain't trying to be petty here, but we gotta be precise here. What we talking about? So it's a fact that the northern states did not have an institution of slavery. Okay, that was a southern thing. Okay, we know that that's how the war was, the North versus the South. Everybody knows that basic history. Okay, now your independent research, we would have to say, is wrong by your own statement. You just admitted that the North had free people. But the question that you're asking does not reflect the truth of history, man. And that got to be understood. And that truth is the North fought to end slavery. Okay, that was the reason. We're not going to act like that's not the reason. But I'm also going to get into that we didn't start that shit either. Okay, not physically. We started on paper through policy, right? Such as the Northwest Ordinance. And by the way, I want you guys to go read the Mississippi secession speech, why they left the United States of America. Mississippi said that the United States of America has been interfering with the institution of slavery ever since the Northwest Ordinance. Okay? So now, this is a southern state that wanted slaves. They're telling you their reason why they left the United States of America. So when other people come and start talking this hyperbole and this bunch of rhetoric about it wasn't about that, that's false. That is absolutely false. And you got to watch that, because the ego could be just so, it's just so big. For whatever reason, we start making up shit to sound convincing. And if you don't know, just say you don't know, right? But the truth of the matter is the Civil War was an issue about slavery and nothing else. Read the secession speech of Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina. Go read them. Virginia, go read them. You'll see. Okay? Now, my third point.
So if the Union were trying to fight against slavery, then why did they allow a state to become part of the Union during the war with slaves?
So the question is asked, why did the Union allow states with slaves to become part of the Union? And again, you're saying it in a tone that is painting the North as being just as guilty as the South. Because that's what you're doing. Because you said if we get rid of Robert Lee statue, we got to get rid of Ulysses S. Grant statue. No, the hell we don't, bruh. And how dare you interject? And I know the research ain't done properly, but even the most basic search will tell you that if Grant had that one slave, he inherited that from an in-law and actually emancipated that slave before the Civil War even started, like 2 years before the Civil War. So what is you talking about, man? You understand what I'm saying? But anyway, so the question is asked, why did the Union allow states with slaves to become part of the Union? Easy. These people were called border states, ladies and gents. These states had slavery. And if they wanted to come into the Union at the time of Civil War, what would you do? What you gonna say? No, go over there with the South because you got slaves and we want to fight you too? No, you don't even want war. Black man today and woman, you don't want war. You didn't want it then and you don't want it now, right? So you don't want war, and rightfully so, nobody does, right? So what you would do is you say, okay, well, come over here. So the border states, they didn't go Confederate, and that was Abraham Lincoln's main concern. You had war. I'm sitting up here, got to fight South Carolina, Virginia. The moment that I start issuing things preliminary, such as an Emancipation Proclamation, before he did it, then West Virginia may say, what, my slaves is free? Oh, hell no. Nah. Confederates, I'm rolling with y'all. And now you just created more enemies. And this is why Abraham Lincoln canceled 2 emancipations written by 2 different generals before his Emancipation Proclamation. General John Fremont wrote one, and General David Hunter wrote one. And Black Dave was the dude. He gave slaves guns. You feel me? And so he canceled those because Abraham Lincoln understood strategy very well. It's very clever. You would read Lincoln's speeches and he would tell people, don't make this about the Negro. You don't have to make it about the Negro now for 2 reasons. The main reason is South Carolina fired the first shot. So now we're playing defense. This ain't about slavery. You fired on us, and I'm telling you, you don't have the right to leave the United States of America, because there was another agreement on the books called the Articles of Confederation and the Perpetual Union, that we all in agreement to be a nation state, and we ain't gonna never break that bond with one another. That was Abraham Lincoln's basis of argument, along with the Declaration of Independence. So we don't have to, since you fired on us first, I don't have to talk about slavery right now as an issue within the war, although all of his debates was about slavery and being against it. We talking about a genius, man. Y'all can't see it, just slow. As my girl Cash say, catch up mustards, okay? So, the second thing is, again, your border states that have slaves, they're going to turn on you if you start talking about freeing the slaves too early. That was his concern. So to answer your question, why allow states with slaves to become part of the Union, is because it's military strategy. And that kind of, again, shines the light on, well, shit, if we was already a slave state, it wouldn't even be a question. The North wasn't part of the slave institution, man. Okay? Now, let's move to point 4.
Why did they have slaves throughout the entire war? It wasn't even really about that. The Civil War was more complicated. Back then, states were more individual. States' rights was a real thing. The only reason why Robert E. Lee fought for the Confederacy to begin with is because he did not want to fight against his home state in Virginia, because they wanted him to be the Union general. But he was like, nah, I ain't gonna fight against, I'm from Virginia, I can't do that. So I'll fight with the Confederacy because I'm fighting for my state. That's kind of how it was back then. This whole issue with slavery wasn't even really a big deal.
Now, you hear him say, why did they have slaves throughout the entire war? It was not really about that. The Civil War was more complicated back then. State rights was a real thing. The whole issue of slavery wasn't a big deal. Now, this could get blown out of proportion, and I'm not going to do that, because the whole issue of slavery wasn't a big deal. You have to be very intellectually mature, mentally mature, because what he's saying in context is, and I'm going to defend my brother, General Lee's selection to fight for Virginia, in the Confederate selection to fight for their home turf, the South, wasn't about slavery. It was more about state rights, because the states were that was more the thing then versus federal government. However, it does not cancel out the fact that, because if Robert Lee, see, the question is, well, Robert Lee didn't have no slaves, so therefore he's not racist. He wanted to just rock with Virginia as his hometown. But we can't leave out the necessary thing. Why is Virginia leaving? So now, ladies and gentlemen, I have to turn your attention to the Virginia Convention voted for secession April 17th, 1861. And they said it out their own mouths. The federal government, having perverted said powers, talking about the Constitution, not only to the injury of the people of Virginia, but to the oppression of the southern slave holding states. And then they further go on and said, they out of here. We done with this Constitution in the United States. So what's their reason for leaving? Because they said the federal government was being oppressive to the slave holding states. What was Mississippi reason? The government is intervening or interfering with the institution of slavery. So that statement is very false, family. When you say that slaves throughout the entire war, it really wasn't about that. Like, it really wasn't about slavery. It was more complicated. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was not. The secession speech made it clear. This shit ain't had nothing to do with the North wanting to get money from the South, or the North knew that if the South broke away, they was going to be broke and not have no money. No, 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 no. Don't do that. Do not do that. Everybody go read the secession speeches of the slave states, and because that's who is fighting. Don't believe me. Don't believe nobody else. Go read for yourself and see what the enemy thought about his enemy and what the reason was. And I'm going to tell you what they said. United States government is interfering with the institution of slavery. Okay? So when you say slavery is not a big deal when it comes to the side of selection, that's some bullshit. Slavery was a big deal because Virginia said, we out of here because they are oppressing us about, they're oppressing our ability to have slaves. Okay? Now, the Civil War and the issue of slavery did not start from the North, ladies and gentlemen. Far as war goes. Sure, the South did not like the U.S. policy of phasing slavery out, but the South took arms against the United States for impeding on their immoral act of slavery. So please do not paint a false picture of the North, as if the North fought the South because they wanted to end slaves. And then you had to ask the question, well, the North had, no, that ain't what happened. Abraham Lincoln was against slavery all through his speeches before he became president. He gets elected. South Carolina was already hip to this shit. Like, yo, you got to watch him. He be talking about he ain't going to interfere with slavery, but we know he really against slavery. We're leaving the United States of America because I know he's against slavery. And then Mississippi followed, then Georgia, then Alabama, then it was South Carolina, and then Mississippi, then Florida, then Georgia, Alabama, then Georgia, then Louisiana, Texas was the seventh in order and how it started to flow, right? So all of them said, yo, I'm out of here, right? I'm out, and we're going to war now. And then they fired the first shot. So it wasn't about the North trying to come in directly and go to war. It wasn't about that. The South got pissed and knew, like, man, he against slavery, so we need to go fight for this, okay? All right, man, let's just be clear on that. All right. My last point, in a sense, is if slavery is an immoral act and wrong, as he admitted,
slavery was abhorrent. It was a terrible thing.
A group of men who decided to leave a country that wanted to end this wrong and join the side that was already at war against the country, then by proxy, Robert Lee and all Confederates are morally wrong and treasonous, and Confederate statues should come out of the public view and at best put in the Museum of History and not as iconic landmarks in any city of the Union known as the United States of America. Make it make sense to us. As the Prime Minister would say, that's like some homeless people standing next to a homeless shelter and you come and, you drop a bomb on them and then you just roll them and you say, oh, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to roll with the people who dropped the bomb on you because the people who dropped the bomb on you, they're my people. That's from my side. Yeah, that's wrong what they did, drop the bomb on you. But since that's my people, I'm going to ride with them though. Come on, man. Come on, fam. Make it make sense to us, please. Come on, man. That don't make no sense. So if you can admit that it is wrong, and you did, then why uphold the statues and the iconography of these particular people? I'm not here to argue about if the South, did you do better in the South and up North? That's subjective, right? But it's interesting because there's a pattern known as the Great Migration. If black folks was doing so good down South after slavery, why didn't they stay? Why did they migrate up North? See, even the history shows you migrated up North, got free. You wasn't on plantations if you stayed down. If you came up North, you wasn't on plantations. Man, you came up North, and then you know what happened immediately to show you how the supreme intelligence of God works? Immediately after the Civil War, and I mean immediately, the next phase came the Industrial Revolution for America. Okay? So now we in General Motors, and now we booming. Now we in Detroit, Black Bottom. We in all these towns coming up north. Black man being the founder of Chicago, and we creating and we getting free and we doing our thing. Okay? So this is not to say that, you live in horrible down south after slavery, but we not going to act like you live in horrible up north, fam. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right. That's a pattern known as a fact, the Great Migration. Okay. So that's there, man. So I just wanted to get that rebuttal in all due respect, man. We love to have this conversation on a Zoom and can get it in and just have some great civil dialogue. All right. So with that said, man, the Union Soldier is out. Peace. Salute to the Colonel, nigga. Master P. Colonel James Montgomery. The North is bout it. He gave Harriet Tubman guns, nigga. Real shit. Google it. Ohio, nigga. We bout it. I'm from the O-H-I-O. The clan don't want smoke, cause we quick to tag they toes. Boom. We from the North. We take no shows. Kidnap these crackers and hang they throats by the rope. We with Lincoln. Fuck you hunky stinking. Bloody your white sheets and lead the clan stinking. This Ohio. Slaves came for survival. Confederate Dixie flag. Ku Klux Klan are my rivals. I got my rifle and I'm killing rebels. Master Far Muhammad. Call them white devils. This supreme wisdom. You ain't on my level. Paramedic is dead. Go and get the shovel. Dropping mystic clues, Union soldiers in blue. Abe, read the slaves, pussy nigga, won't you tell the truth? What you scared for? A line of black folks, stop telling niggas it was a trick from the North. Slavery got you fucked, cause it's in your DNA. Abe ain't breed the slaves, it's some whole shit to say. Cause we bout it, I don't doubt it. Harriet Tubman, Union soldiers, won't you niggas shout it? Shout 54, Massachusetts. Abe gave us guns, we marched south and we used them. 7-shot Spencers when the South was against us. You can see I'm getting defensive cause your lies be offensive. You don't make sense, get your ass off the fence. Harriet Tubman would've shot you cause you acting like a bitch. You a bitch. What side you on? Screaming in the microphone. Union soldiers on patrol told the South get gone. We beat them, they suckers we defeat them. Emancipation Proclamation, Battle of the Kingdom. Won't you Google, nigga? You a doodle, nigga. Try to come against me and watch me do that voodoo, nigga. Union shooters, strapped with the Rugers. We beat Breast and Bragg, Fag Ass in Chattanooga. South Carolina, they won't out, cause Abe Lincoln took the White House. This is slavery, nigga. It's what it's about. Won't you check the records from the dirty South? These are facts, bitch. Won't you shut your fucking mouth? Trying to sound deep, YouTube chasing clout. We bout it, we rowdy. This Ohio nigga, and we been bout it. This the Civil War, won't you check the record? If the shit is false, won't you please contest it? William Sherman, he bout it. Wrote 40 acres in the mule, so we bout it. Edward Stanton, he bout it. He the Secretary of War, so we bout it. General Grant, you know we bout it. Made Lee surrender, cause he bout it. James Montgomery, he bout it. Gave Harriet Tubman guns, so he bout it. We all from Ohio, nigga, cause we bout it. No slaves across the Ohio River, forget about it. This up north, nigga, we bout it. Ain't no slaves.